Hi, I'm Till Cars, also known as the Speak Doctor. I help people with the number one fear they have, that's public speaking. And you're listening to the Dr. Sky Show.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to our exciting show where great guests appear in this particular lineup. The regular Dr. Sky Show, sometimes, ladies and gentlemen, we change the format, not only talking about the subjects of astronomy, space, aviation, and weather, but celebrity guests and ways that you can, of course, help yourself with great guests here on the Dr. Sky Show. Special thanks today to our producer, Richard Dugan of KZSB Radio 1290 in Santa Barbara, California. And thank you to all the stations around the nation that do air the Dr. Sky Show. Ladies and gentlemen, an exciting guest today talking about a very important subject. Our special guest is Till Cars, communication consultant, a trainer, a speaker, and an author. He'll be here today to talk to us about many subjects about personal self-development, but particularly enhancing your presentation skills. All throughout this interview and after the interview, visit his interesting website at www.thetrainer4u.com. That's www.thetrainer4u.com. Till, welcome to the Dr. Sky Show. Thank you so much for spending some time today. And let's talk about this particular subject that's so important to many people out there, gaining confidence in public speaking and the ability to enhance your presentation skills. A little bit of your background, I think, would be in order, so we set the stage for our interview.
Sure, absolutely. Happy to be on your show. It's great to speak with you and your audience, Dr. Sky.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I've been teaching presentation skills, public speaking skills for about 25 years, almost hard to believe. I've probably taught in one way, shape, or form, fashion, or another about 250,000 people. I've worked with half the Fortune 1000. I've got a best-selling book, Enhancing Your Presentation Skills, and Presentation Skills Mastery is the #1 speaking instructional DVD on Amazon. And I have an MBA. I was in corporate sales for about 12 years before getting into the consulting business.
Very interesting subject, and I understand also learning a little bit about your background, and if you'd be kind enough to share that with the audience. You're born in Germany, and of course when you come to the United States, of course, going all through your academic programs, you also have a very interesting side of you that I don't think many people know about, and that is you actually have a very interesting musical background that you could share with us on.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you for talking about that. I have a passion for music. And after being in corporate America for a while, I decided to pursue my musical dream and actually got signed to a record deal. And what's interesting for your audience to know is that many of the performing skills that I use are definitely transferable to public speaking and making presentation skills. You know, when we use eye contact, the different type of energy that we have, making sure that the message comes across very genuinely, whether you're singing a song or presenting your idea to your boss or somebody else you're trying to convince of something, or if you're a politician.
Yes, very interesting. And we're here to learn so much today, ladies and gentlemen. Our special guest, as I mentioned before, and we'll mention it proudly again, is Till Cars, communication consultant, trainer, a speaker, and an author, here to talk with us about self-confidence, the ability to speak in front of audiences. Ladies and gentlemen, that's probably one of the most, one of the most difficult things for people to actually maybe admit to. And I know myself, being in the broadcast industry and you being the pro and the trainer, tell us more about this big fear, because it probably ranks up as probably one of the major concerns that people have when conducting business or just maybe getting up during the holidays to say hi or sing a song.
Very rarely do we actually speak in public. Perhaps you and I might do it more often than normal.
Yes.
But the average person, no matter how much money they make, no matter how well educated they are, no matter how long they've been with a company, no matter what kind of clothes they're wearing or what they drive, that kind of thing, it doesn't really matter. When you get up in front of an audience, it's something we very rarely do, and we're not really sure what to do when we're up there, because all of a sudden we feel this adrenaline surge and we get stuck, and we get what I call brain freeze, and we think, uh-oh, I lost my train of thought. What am I going to say next?
Well, absolutely. You bring the point right to the center. And a very important point. I mean, myself, and not to spend a lot of time, I've been in this industry for about 40 years, like yourself, moving forward with great help. And I remember my first time, like we all do, let's say in kindergarten or, of course, in grammar school, when we're asked to get up there and do our show and tell. And we all know, we feel those butterflies. And in the short time we have with you today, what's the single most important thing that you can pass on to this audience today so that if they're saying, oh, no, I've heard so many people tell me that I can overcome this fear, what would be the Till Carr's answer that you might just give out of the chute here to help somebody gain some confidence so that they could do exactly what we're talking about?
At the cornerstone of it is something that I call, and again, you can read about it in my book, it's called Lock, Talk, and Pause. And what that means essentially, Dr. Sky, you talk to one person at a time. I can talk to you at lunch. I can talk to a friend. Most of us have no problem at all talking to one person. So we need to transfer that when we get up in front of the big room. And if we don't, what happens is we get overwhelmed. We think, gee, my boss is out there, or my family's out there, or people that are trying to take my job are out there, the competitors are listening. We overwhelm ourselves with everybody in the audience. What we need to do is just lock in with one person, talk to that one person, then pause, and go to the next person. So you're having literally a presentation to just one person at a time for about a sentence or a couple of words. That's it. And then you pause, and then you look at someone else. And when you do that, you start to get the handle on the nervous energy. The nervous energy is never going to go away. It's always going to be there. But we have to start to get anchors. We have to get our bearings. And that's how you do it. Lock, talk, and pause. One person at a time. And that slows you down, and that gets your confidence back.
No, I think that's a great, as we begin our interview today with Till Carr, as we move through time and space, as we like to say on the Dr. Sky Show. Always great guests, ladies and gentlemen, not only from the science arena, but celebrity guests, and also people in the self-help realm, as we're talking to Till Carr today, communications consultant, trainer, speaker, and author, and so much more. As you've been listening, as we continue our interview, enhancing your presentation skills and so much more. Let's go back to that first moment when we all had that stage fright, if that's a fair word to it, and whatever we call it, we know it when we had it happen to us. We remember that moment.
Yeah.
Describe it a little bit in more detail. So you're saying focus on someone in the audience, a few sentences. How important, though, and I've heard this from many, many professionals in the broadcast industry, that if you're giving a main address, it is so important to have eye contact with that entire audience, because I guess what? I mean, looking at people, I guess, is kind of the direct pathway to the heart and the soul. But describe the importance of making eye contact with your audience, and not as if you're looking and reading notes if you're giving a presentation.
Dr. Sky, excellent point. Very, very important point. Eye contact, again, that's part of the lock, talk, and pause that I just mentioned. You need to look at one person at a time. Obviously, making that direct eye contact, it denotes veracity. And in our culture, certainly in Western culture, when you look someone directly in the eye, that typically means you're telling the truth. If you've ever raised kids or you interviewed somebody and they were talking about how they had a PhD from Harvard and had straight A's, and all of a sudden their eyes are flipping all over the place, it's what I call the aerosol eyes phenomenon. That's not a good thing. So you need to look at one person at a time. Eye contact is paramount. And again, in our culture, it's so important. Now, the good news is if you're speaking to a larger group, whether it's 50 or 500 people, if I'm looking at someone in the fifth row or the seventh row, the great news for your audience is that about 25 people think, hey, he's looking right at me or she's looking right at me.
Exactly.
Even though I'm looking at just one person.
Well, it's very important because, again, I do some public speaking. I know you do this all the time, and not only the professional speaking role, but also in the endearment of training people to overcome not only their fears, but let's put it in a more positive way. It's not just to overcome fears, correct, Till? It's to make people better presenters who already, let's say this, I'm sure you see, and I'd like to ask you, many people that you meet, I'm sure you see that they have the good ingredients so that what? They can simply become better by utilizing some of the techniques that not only we're talking about, but that you can find out in your book. Everybody is going to have some level of fear. Some people have a little less fear. Some people have a little more. I deal with a lot of corporate clients. Typically, sales-type people aren't as afraid or nervous about public speaking as maybe an accountant or an engineer. Now, I'm painting with a broad brush. I've seen some engineers that are absolutely fantastic presenters. But nevertheless, what you really have to do is channel the nervousness. There's always going to be some degree of nervousness. If we transfer over, make an analogy, right now we're in the midst of the NFL season. You look at great quarterbacks like Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, or great performers like Garth Brooks or Barbra Streisand. All those people have publicly said they get nervous before a game or before a performance. Obviously, they're highly professional, but what they're able to do is control
and channel that nervous energy productively, as opposed to having it really, really undermine what you're trying to do and deliver your message. So you need to channel the nervousness, and don't be afraid that you're going to get a little shot of adrenaline. That's normal. That's going to happen. It always happens. It's just a question of channeling it, knowing what to do. It's like letting steam out of the pot. And one of the things you can do is double your volume, have more voice inflection, use gestures, and that's one of the ways that you can kind of dispense with some of that adrenaline.
Till, I want to move down to the path of the personal interview. Nowadays, with the economy being what it is, some think it's okay, some think it's disastrous, but if you just simply look at the U.S. Labor Department statistics, obviously there are many people out there that are not employed that would like to be. Let's talk about some of the useful hints and tips that you bring to the table for someone now translating all of this information into that job interview. Because what? Resumes get scanned in a matter of what? Minutes or even seconds, I've heard.
Absolutely.
So it's up to you. So if I'm the candidate and I want that job, I want that position, and it's a tight job market, give us some suggestions from your side.
And you mentioned it earlier. The eye contact is key. When you meet somebody, please make eye contact with them. That's important. Mm-hmm. The other thing that we can learn from presentation skills, the interviewer, just like the audience, sometimes they're nervous for us, and the employer may be a little bit nervous as well. So smile. Generally speaking, smiling is good. That doesn't mean you have to have the biggest grin you've ever had, like you just won $20 million in the lottery. But you need to smile. You need to generally be happy. That's not a bad thing. And most audiences and most people that we engage socially will appreciate it if we smile. It relaxes everybody on both sides of the table. Now, furthermore, when you're interviewing, a couple of things that you can do, again, that we can borrow from presentation skills, and then I'll add a few other things.
Please.
Use some gestures off the top of the table. So always keep your hands on top of the table. Don't ever hide it under a desk if there's a desk involved. You don't want to hide your hands because, the employer will think, gee, what are they doing with their hands under there? So you want to show, okay, my hands are here on the table. Don't put them together. It's what we call the magnet position, because once the hands come together, they never come apart. So gestures simply on the tabletop. If you talk about an increase in sales or a decrease, how you reduce costs with the last employer, show us that, because our hands are like paintbrushes and we remember what we see really statistically, not what we hear. The other thing that you can do, and what I think is real important, is always have some questions at the ready for the employer. And sometimes, a lot of people actually that interview for positions haven't really researched the company. There might be a lot of press out there. There might be some new things going on with that company that the average person doesn't know, or the typical candidate won't know. Research above and beyond the website. I mean, it's 101 that you should check out their website.
Absolutely.
Have some questions for them, and this is more important, make sure that you think of the toughest questions that you're going to get and rehearse those over and over again as far as good answers, so that you don't do the old which is another presentation skills tip. And by the way, if you don't know what to say, don't say or simply pause. Don't say anything at all. And our brains are great computers. You'll think of something soon enough, but just pause.
Well, Till, I guess I could sum it up this way and see if you agree. I'm going to say this in a very lighthearted way. Maybe it'll get a laugh from the audience. Whether you're proposing to that significant other for marriage or what have you, going for the order, and going into a job interview, or you're in a presidential debate, all these skills, correct, are somehow interlaced here. They're all connected.
It's like I'm hearing myself. I tell people that all the time. If you're proposing to your significant other, making eye contact, having passion, being genuine, you don't want to look off somewhere else when you're proposing to someone and saying, hey, I'd like to spend the rest of my life with you. At the same time, you're in a presidential debate. I do a lot of presidential debate analysis.
Interesting.
And it's the same skill set. You're 100% right. We can really learn from all of this positive body language for sure.
Let's go down that path, if you don't mind, for a moment. Let's take the analysis of the recent presidential debates. If we look at President Obama and we look at candidate Mitt Romney, I mean, if you could just give us a summation of the strengths and weaknesses of both of those candidates from presentation skills, I think people could relate to that very quickly.
Obama's first debate, I think we could all agree, whether it was, Chris Matthews on one side or Bill O'Reilly on the other side, Democrats and Republicans, Obama didn't do a very good job.
Not at all.
and he lacked energy. He lacked voice inflection. He had a monotone. He almost seemed like he was disinterested. And again, I never pick one side or the other. I don't talk about policy typically. I deal more with cosmetics. Mm-hmm. But he just didn't look the part. I have to say, Mitt Romney looked much better in the first debate, no question about it. He talked very confidently. He knew his facts. He presented them very, very clearly in very, very easy terms. I have to say that after that, of course, Obama stepped up his game, and I think that really helped him. Now, one of the debates your audience might remember that's very, very important and that really, really had a huge impact on the outcome, I believe. If you go back to 2000, Al Gore and George W. Bush.
Yes.
Al Gore actually, and again, I'm not picking sides, one way or another. We just look at the cosmetics. That's what I do in my side of the world. Al Gore looked very pompous. He looked very stiff, and he looked very arrogant, and people just didn't like him for whatever reason. A lot of independents didn't like him, and above and beyond Florida, that's probably one of the main reasons that he lost. He just didn't come across as a likable person in the debates. If you go back to Obama and Hillary, years back, when Obama first came on the presidential scene, a lot of people thought Hillary was going to win the Democratic nomination. But again, she has this problem of likability. Obama smiled more. He seemed like a friendlier guy. And for whatever reason, we typically fall in love or vote for people that we like. It worked very well for Ronald Reagan, a Republican, two-term president, and same for Bill Clinton. I like to always mention those two gentlemen because they're both considered to be the great communicator, quote unquote. They both smiled. They talked slowly. They made eye contact. Anybody that was in the room with either Ronald Reagan or Clinton, and I've met a lot of people in Washington, D.C., where I do a lot of work on both sides of the aisle,
sure.
They always talk about, wow, they made you feel like they were the only person in the room.
No, it's a very important story, and we appreciate your time today. If you're just joining us, ladies and gentlemen, always great guests here on the Dr. Sky Show. Till Kars, communication consultant, trainer, speaker, and author. Enhancing your presentation skills is one of the venues that we're talking about. Moving through time and space, you can also learn much more about him at www.thetrainer4u.com. That's www.thetrainer4u.com. And don't forget his exciting book, ladies and gentlemen, is available where all good books are sold, particularly on Amazon. The book's entitled Enhancing Your Presentation Skills. And Till, one more thing I know you and I spoke about off air that if you don't mind sharing with the audience, also talking about presidential debates, the great Kennedy and Nixon debate back in 1960. Depends on where or what you were doing. If you were watching on the new media television, you might have had a different result of who you thought won than if you heard it on radio, correct?
Right. That was really the birthplace of presentation skills, and I'm going to say media skills. 1960, presidential debate between JFK and, of course, Richard Nixon. So interesting. A lot more people were still listening to radio back then as far as getting all their information. And on the radio, Nixon clearly won, and all they heard, of course, were the words. Now, on the TV, overwhelmingly, and TV was still a relatively new medium, of course, only black and white back then, and you had the tubes and all that stuff.
Sure.
And JFK won dramatically on the TV side. Now, what's interesting about it, he had been in California, he'd been campaigning, he had that bronze tan. Nixon looked rather mean, he looked angry, even if he really wasn't. He just didn't come across very well, and you could see him sweat. He looked nervous. He looked fidgety. And that, like I said, is really the birthplace of media skills, especially as we know it today. And it was a defining moment because, again, on the radio, Nixon won very clearly. On TV, JFK won. What does that tell you? Seeing is believing, I suppose.
I agree, Till. Very interesting information. And just to share in the few moments we have with the audience with some more information from your website at www.thetrainer4u.com. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're thinking the man just helps people like you and I, well, nothing is further from the truth. He continues to help many other business ventures in the world. And let's talk a little bit about this. I find it fascinating. You also have an attorney training program, and you're also involved in doing something else, automotive training. And it's very interesting because You yourself have been involved in what? The automobile business for many years, so you know what it takes to be a competent person so that when you're on the other side of the dealership there and the customer comes in, you know how to have those employees attain the results that the management or that the companies would expect to meet quota and so forth.
Yeah, that's right. I have a lot of automotive clients. I've been very blessed. I've had a chance to do some automotive consulting, even overseas in Shanghai, in Japan. I've worked with Toyota Motor Corporation in Japan and their home base. They have a city called Toyota City outside of Nagoya, Japan. And in the automotive business, you know, more than any other, or certainly as much as any other business, certainly as much as politics, that confidence, that eye contact, that esprit de corps that you need to have is so important. That transfers really all, you know, to all industries and transcends any industry in that, you know, attorneys, CEOs, corporate executives, salespeople, engineers, accountants, anybody that presents in public to try to sell their wares or their widgets or their particular service, it's so paramount that you use all of these great presentation skills and tips.
Very helpful. As we all know, I'm Dr. Sky, but you also are the Speak Doctor. Talk to us in the voice of the Speak Doctor.
Yes, sir. I am the Speak Doctor, and you are listening to the Dr. Sky Show.
Well, this is awesome, and describe to us, Till, a little bit more about that. I mean, describe to us, this is the reality show trailer that you've come up with.
Yes, I've had a couple meetings. We're working very closely on this reality show called The Speak Doctor. You know, I was watching these other great shows of before and after, and you've seen it all, whether it's with dogs or criminals, whatever you're doing. And I thought, you know, what a great idea to do that with the number one fear people have and show them when they're not making a great presentation, have them spend a few minutes with The Speak Doctor, and then hopefully turn them around so you see a dramatic before and after right before your very eyes. So we're working on it. Stay tuned for that one.
Well, we certainly will, Till, and I think that's a very valuable asset to the world. But for the average person like us out there who obviously has that fear or maybe trepidation of getting up in front of an audience, what they'll learn, as we would imagine in any good book, but they will learn particularly some of these techniques while you go into greater detail in enhancing your presentation skills. Till, talk to us a little bit more. I want to go back a little bit. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to a man who has a distinct music career, and I'm sorry I can't get off this one today, but I'm reading here in a bio that I'm reading, your constant playing provided you the opportunity to headline, listen to this, ladies and gentlemen, the Crazy Horse Saloon in Santa Ana, California, which you sold out twice in the mid-'90s.
Yes, I did. It was really, it was named Country Club of the Year by the CMA people, and it was a pretty tall order going from the coffee houses, and then with a full band, steel guitar players, drums, and all that, and bass player, and selling out the Crazy Horse. Wow, you know, Garth Brooks has played there. Yeah. And all the biggest stars in the world, Johnny Cash, have played there before. So I was honored and blessed to play there. They had a cancellation in Nashville. They asked me to play because I was a local. They knew I would sell the place out. And it really went over, you know, rave reviews. And it's interesting because you can imagine, right before I stepped on the stage, somebody said, hey, the LA Times is going to be reviewing your show. Mm-hmm. So talk about fear. I mean, I think I'm a pretty confident guy, but believe me, I was scared to death. But I used the skills. I focused on one person at a time, and believe me, that's hard to do when those lights are coming down on you like that.
So here's a man who talks the
Used the gestures, knew my stuff backwards and forwards. I certainly knew the material,
right,
but I presented it in a genuine way, and again, just tried to use the skills, the eye contact, and had a little bit of fun. You got to smile up there. People enjoy seeing somebody that's having fun, generally speaking. Of course, if you're speaking at a eulogy or talking about downsizing, you don't want to be smiling, but you know, generally people like that stuff.
And the LA Times called you, as you know, and I quote, the master of hooks, end of quote, and mentioned further, quote, his greatest asset is his winning baritone, end of quote, after reviewing one of his shows. And that led to what? A 6-album record deal by Autogram Records, as I'm hopefully reading this information correctly.
Yeah, and thank you so much for looking into that. I really, really appreciate that. Yeah, I was very blessed. I got signed as a singer-songwriter, had a couple of hits in Europe, 2 top 10 hits. And it's interesting, in Europe, they really revere singer-songwriters, and if you sing a song, or they want to hear it from the person that wrote it. So that really kind of helped me over there, because I did start out as a songwriter first, and then went on to sing on my own demos, and people said, hey, you got a pretty good voice. And one thing led to another, and we had a couple top 10 hits. I've been very blessed, needless to say.
Wonderful time with you, Till. If you have the moment, you have a couple of minutes, about 2 to be exact. Kind of give us a summation of points in case people are just joining us. And again, this particular edition of the Dr. Sky Show is also available, of course, at the Internet, at our many websites here and around the nation. Till, give us a summation.
Yes, absolutely, Dr. Sky. Happy to share some things. First of all, when you get up there, generally remember that you're going to be nervous. That's going to happen. It's never going to go away. Even if you practice a lot, you need to know what you're talking about. First thing, make eye contact with one person at a time. It's what we call lock, talk, and pause. Lock in with one person, pause, look at the next person. When you break it down to just one person at a time, it's a lot easier. Also, slow down, pace yourself. That way you avoid all the ahs and ums. Finally, you're going to still have some adrenaline running through your body, so you use that adrenaline flow to use some great gestures. If you have an increase or something dramatic happen, or you have a big global company, let's see that with a great big gesture. Get some air under the arms. And if you're standing behind a podium, please don't grab onto that podium. Finally, double your volume. Use voice inflection. You don't have to be an over-the-top motivational speaker or a slicer and dicer in the middle of the night selling their wares on TV. But have a little passion in your voice, because if you can't get fired up about your message, it's certainly going to be hard to motivate your audience, Dr. Sky.
Well, Till, I've learned a lot, and I'm sure the audience has. If you'd be kind enough to stay with us as we go to the top of the hour break here in radio, we'll chat with you for a moment off air. Ladies and gentlemen, a summation from Dr. Sky's point. That's Till Kars, communication consultant, trainer, speaker, and author. Conquering your fear of public speaking by enhancing your presentation skills. Don't forget to visit his important website, www.thetrainer4u.com, and the 4 is the number 4. Ladies and gentlemen, his book, Enhancing Your Presentation Skills, is able to be purchased wherever good books are sold, but particularly on Amazon. And I want to wish Till and his family the best for a great holiday and a most wonderful 2014, where we hopefully all gain that confidence to step out of our box and our safety zone, right, Till? And
absolutely, and happy holidays to everybody. I wish everybody the best.
That concludes this exciting edition of the Dr. Sky Show. Usually great guests from the realms of astronomy, space, aviation, and weather, with a celebrity guest in the mix. And today, Till Kars, the communication specialist, consultant, trainer, speaker, and author. Dr. Sky always reminds each and every one of you to always remember to keep your eyes to the sky. Thank you, Till Kars.